Welcome to Pennsylvania. We're going to Gettysburg today. Daze with Jordan the Lion begins right now. Here's our sign for Gettysburg right here, as a matter of fact. Now here we have President Lincoln, who a year after this battle returned and made his famous Gettysburg Address speech that basically vowed to bring together the country and to make sure that all people felt created equally. Right here on this rock, they actually have the Gettysburg Address. And we will go out to where he gave that address today. Now, I am by no means an expert on this battle at all, but I do know it was the bloodiest of all the battles during the Civil War, and that this was the turning point for the Union Army to eventually win the war. So I'm hoping we'll learn some stuff today. This is the town of Gettysburg at the time that the Confederate Army would have been marching through when this all started. It was a 3-day battle, and the first day they were battling throughout the middle of town. Actually, some of the local houses had been turned into hospitals. Here they have a display on the artillery, the different guns of the Civil War, the different pistols, and the different rifles. And over here they have on display a Confederate soldier's uniform for the day, or for the battle here, and a Union soldier's uniform. And of course some of the marching band, the military band that would have been out there playing them to war. Here are the two main generals of this war. On the left, the Union General George Meade. On the right, General Robert E. Lee for the Confederates. Yeah, this thing's pretty amazing. As you stand inside the Cyclorama, it tells you the whole story of the war, like I said, but it's just kind of cool because you can walk around and just take in exactly where we're at and the whole circle of what Gettysburg would have been like then. Pretty cool. Take a look at this. They actually painted Abraham Lincoln into this. If you look down here above this well, he's actually being carried right there. Now we're gonna watch the Cyclorama. It's pretty famous here.
Union guns thunder back. A mile away, some 7,000 Union troops
weeping upon us. Oh, some loved one he had left at home.
1,000 yards in parade ground order, closing ranks.
Terrible crossfire. The men reeled and staggered between falling comrades.
Union soldiers overwhelmed the Confederate attackers.
Great roar heaves forward its maddened load. Before the coward, when all my friends and companions are going forward. The Battle of Gettysburg is ended. Is a hero.
There's the U.S. flag in 1861. So if you look in this glass case, this is actually General Robert E. Lee's traveling headquarters. These were all the things he used during this battle. His bed. Even have his heater over here. Here's one of the Confederate bronze cannons. Said it was one of the most common and most effective uses for battle because it could shoot up to a mile away.
But the Confederates gained a foothold on the hill.
And then this is General Meade's headquarters. The actual real items.
The infantry's engaged. After 7 hours of fighting.
This is kind of interesting. They have some autograph pages from the day of the Gettysburg Address and one that Lincoln had signed right at the top. And it says here, he almost didn't give this address. He almost was going to cancel because his son was desperately ill and he was unsure whether he could participate. But he decided that he should go to Gettysburg to honor the fallen. And these two chairs were on the speaker's platform while Abraham Lincoln gave the Gettysburg Address. Now this is what became known as Cemetery Hill. Here it tells a little bit of the story of what happened the first day on July 1st. It says, about 2 p.m., General Adolph von Steinwehr and 1st Brigadier General Colonel Charles R. Coster arrived at 2 p.m., went into position on Cemetery Hill supporting Battery 1, New York's 1st Artillery, and covered the commanding position. Their skirmishers taking possession of a church and nearby house to prevent occupancy by Confederate sharpshooters. You can see out here as you walk around, they have monuments to various people and different parts of the Army. Like, they mention a lot of the Army of the Potomac. And even though this battle didn't end the war didn't end for a couple more years, had the Union, at this point the Union was losing before this battle. Had they lost this, they probably would have lost the war, so it was a major turning point. Here's General Winfield Hancock of the Union Army. Of course, this was all battlefield. As far as the eye can see, and going all the way over through there too. Look at this monument over here. It's to Pickett's Battery. And here they have a little bit of the history of what happened on this battle on Cemetery Hill. It's kind of worn out, but I'll read what I can. It says, this hill was occupied by Union forces at noon, July 1st, and provided a rallying point that afternoon for Union soldiers retreating to and from beyond the town. On the evening of July 2nd, coordinated with the attack on Culp's Hill to your right, 2,000 Confederate soldiers advanced against this hill from beyond the school building site in your front, which would have been down there. And Culp's Hill is over there. Hard to imagine that in 3 days they would have a third of everyone that fought in this would either die or be wounded in this battle. General Lee brought like 97,000 troops through. Eventually, they just kept calling for more reinforcements, both armies, and eventually General Lee ended up deciding to retreat back to Virginia. Nearby, November 19th, 1863, in dedicating the National Cemetery, Abraham Lincoln gave the address, which was handwritten in Washington, revised after his arrival at Gettysburg, the evening of November 18th. And that cemetery is right there. You can see the sign for the cemetery, and I love the entrance because they have the name of all the states that were participating in that battle at that time. So you can see July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island. We're definitely gonna have to make a trip back here because there's no way you could possibly see everything in one day. There's just way too much. We'll see what we can. Okay, so we are right here And we're gonna walk all the way to the back to where Lincoln gave the speech. I wanna see that. And then you'll notice each state has a number by it. I believe that is noting where the soldiers were buried on here. Here's the memorial to Major General John Reynolds. Here you can see Major Reynolds was killed here at Gettysburg on the first day. Hit by a stray bullet. I noticed inside the museum part of the visitor center that we were in, they had some newspaper clippings from Gettysburg at the time. And they had all kinds of ads out looking for people with carriages to help with burials. People with extra shovels, because they had so many people dying, thousands of men dying, and many thousands more wounded that they couldn't handle it all. The neighing troop, the flashing blade, the bugle stirring blast, the charge, the dreadful cannonade, the din and shout are past. And then that big memorial there is to New York. The infantry from New York. See, I believe how all this started in this particular battle was that General Lee had sent some of his troops to get supplies here in Gettysburg, and then when they got here they saw that it was being guarded by Union soldiers, so they sent word back to General Lee, but I believe that the Confederate side thought that it was just a local regiment that was protecting the city, and so they sent a few extra backups, but they weren't too worried about it, and in that time they sent someone back. A whole slew of Union soldiers was on its way and arrived the same day. Your own proud land's heroic soil must be your fitter's grave. She claims from war his richest spoil, the ashes of the brave. And it was also interesting to hear that during this battle, there would be a point where the Union soldiers would create basically a fishhook defense full of soldiers to keep the Confederate soldiers out, but eventually they would end up having a mile long of soldiers shoulder to shoulder walking towards the Confederate army. Oh, I think I can see the Lincoln site just beyond those trees. Oh yeah, there it is, right over there. What history. This was the main thing that I really wanted to see today. You have a sign here that says, "This monument commemorates Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, November 19th, 1863. The address was delivered about 300 yards from this spot along the Upper Cemetery Drive. The site is now marked by the Soldiers' National Monument." So here's the memorial. Of course, it has the address. 407 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who gave their lives that the nation might live. It is also altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men living and dead who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but, boy, was he wrong on that, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us the living rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they fought here, have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to those great tasks remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from this earth. So since they put the Veterans Memorial over where Lincoln gave the speech, let's go see that and see exactly where the speech was given. Looks like this giant monument right here in the center is the Veterans Memorial. Right here at the base, they actually have, you can see the Gettysburg Address listed there, and it's actually on that plaque going across. It's basically a recreation of the exact handwritten version. You can see up there the 407 years ago, and then his signature and the date and everything here. If you get closer, you can see that Kentucky is the one that put this, honoring their favorite son, Abraham Lincoln. So if right here on this mound is where he gave the speech, just consider what that day would have been like, how many people would have been here watching as far as the eye can see, listening to that speech. Kind of comical to see in his speech he says that nobody will remember this day. Boy, if he only knew how famous that speech ended up being. And it's also crazy to think that he's one of the most well-respected, most loved presidents, and yet when he was elected, half the Union seceded, so it was kind of like he almost looked like he was destroying the country originally and then ended up making it much better. And peace to those buried here, unknown. We're going to go ahead and leave the cemetery now. There are a couple other things I want to see here in Gettysburg. That's the Jenny Wade house. She was hit by a stray bullet, the only civilian hit by a stray bullet. I believe the story is that she was in her house cooking and a Confederate bullet went through the window and hit her and killed her. She was the only, I guess, civilian death. Very cool town. Now this is really cool. This is the Gettysburg train station, also known as the Lincoln train station, because this was the station that brought him in for the Gettysburg Address, and which he also left from here. But during the battle here at Gettysburg, this was also a hospital, and the railroad here was used to bring in new supplies and send out wounded soldiers. And it's actually a museum, but it looks like they're doing renovations right now, so it's closed, but they have a whole experience inside of here. Kind of the reliving the train ride for Lincoln. Wow, to think he would have came in and left on these tracks for that. And right directly across the street, they have an Abraham Lincoln diner. I like it. I like the theming. Now, Abraham Lincoln was not the only president to have a history in this town. Let me show you. Just right up the block here where the college is. Right here we have a statue to one of our, maybe one of our all-time greatest, if not greatest, general and a great president, Dwight D Eisenhower. Now, why is there a statue of Dwight D Eisenhower here? Very good reason. If you come over here, it says, After leaving the White House in 1961, former President and Commanding General Dwight D Eisenhower retired to his permanent Gettysburg home. The adjacent building, located on the campus of Gettysburg College at 300 Carlisle Street, was used by General Eisenhower as an office until his death in 1969. Here, General Eisenhower wrote 4 volumes of memoirs and was consulted by his own government foreign dignitaries, aspiring political candidates, authors, and students of this and other colleges. Huh, very cool. So, I'll show you. It said it was adjacent to this, 300 Carlisle. So that statue we just saw is right there, and then over here they have another plaque that said this was his office, that this building right here, that administrative building in between his statue and here, that's where he lived for all those years. Then if you walk a little towards the college, they have another statue of Abraham Lincoln over here. Here it is. It's actually Abraham Lincoln signing the Emancipation Proclamation, January 1st of 1863. And here's the second statue of Dwight D Eisenhower here in town. General Dwight D Eisenhower, Supreme Commander of Allied Forces. Okay, let's go for D-Day. Pretty cool, he's got a couple of statues here in town. All right, my friends, we're gonna call it a day. I hope you enjoyed our day here in Gettysburg. There's a lot more to see, but we were here for a handful of hours, and I think we saw a lot. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great night. Thank you to all who served, and goodbye.